Okay. So hi, everybody. I'm so glad that you've joined me. I'm Jean Hainer. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the author of 4 books published by Hay House. The most recent one is Clear Home, Clear Heart. And that's about energy clearing, which is some of what I'm going to be talking about today. But, the focus today is on what are the top 3 myths about empaths. So let's define first, what is an empath? How do we define the term empath? Here's how I define it. An empath is someone who is sensitive to the energy around them, the energy of the people around them, the energy of the places around them. And many empaths are sponges for that energy. They soak it in, they take it on, and that's one of the reasons empaths often have trouble managing in the world, because they're just in overwhelm much of the time. Here's the thing, I qualify for talking about this because I was born at the extreme end of the range of being an empath. Even as a small child, I could feel the energy around me, which was great in some ways, but the downside of that is that I could walk into an empty room where there may have been an argument 2 weeks ago, and the energy of that argument still lingered as kind of a invisible fog in that room. I would walk in the room, feel that, and immediately start to feel ill. And of course, there was no language. There isn't still today for most people. There was no way to talk about this, to understand this experience. So I thought there was something terribly wrong with me. And a little bit later, I'm going to tell you the end of that story about how I became an empowered empath. But when I was a child, I was sick literally my whole childhood because I was just in overwhelm. My system couldn't cope with all the energy it was taking on. And to one degree or another, all empaths are somewhere on that spectrum. They may not be at that extreme end of the range. There are ways to transform that, and I don't get sick anymore, and I don't have any problems anymore, and I'll be talking more about why that happened. But there's a few more things to talk about first. I want to teach you some things, give you some tips, give you some information that you can use in your everyday life. So we're going to talk about the top 3 myths about empaths, but I also want to talk about the fact that there's different types of empaths. And in fact, you could, if you are an empath, you can be more than one type. Oh, lucky you. And so you could be sensitive to energy in different ways. And it can be so helpful to understand that. And then I also want to talk about some ways to have healthier energetic boundaries with the energy around you, but not to have to, quote unquote, protect yourself, but instead to be able to deal with any kind of energy, any kind of people, any kind of places, and still stay in balance no matter what happens, to not be knocked off balance, to not be stressed by that. And then lastly, I'll be doing some Q&A, answering questions for people who are attending live, okay? So let's get right to it. Myth number 1. So the first myth I want to talk about in terms of empaths is this belief that empaths are over-emotional, emotionally fragile, or emotionally volatile, or cry at the drop of a hat, and oh my gosh, you've got to walk on eggshells around them because they're going to get upset no matter what you do. This is a myth, this is not true, but let's understand how it came to be. The whole focus of all of my work is about compassion. Compassionate understanding of why someone is the way they are, and how to hold a space for them, how to be in a place where you're not judging them or you're not reacting to them based on who they are. If you have an understanding of why they're behaving the way that they are, then you can have compassion and understanding for them, and that changes the whole relationship. It gives you a new place to stand. So why are some empaths considered over emotional and flaky? Well, there's a certain kind of empath called an emotional empath. And this is someone who's sensitive to the feelings around them, that they can be a sponge for the thoughts and feelings of the people around them. They soak them in. Emotional empaths are also very in touch with their own emotions. Their emotions are close to the surface. They're emotionally available in relationship. That's a wonderful thing. It's said that they have very open hearts, and that is true. But the fact also exists that they're not just feeling their own feelings, they're feeling other people's feelings as well. And often they can't tell what's their own feeling and what is someone else's because they're feeling it inside of them. So how would you be able to know or even, get any sense of that concept? So emotional empaths are often buffeted as they go through their days by their own feelings and other people's feelings, and it can be overwhelming emotionally. Now, here's the thing. All of my work is based on Chinese medicine. And in Chinese medicine, they teach that our consciousness does not reside in our brain. Our consciousness resides in our hearts. And so someone who is an emotional empath, which means they have a very open heart, it also means they have a very open consciousness. Now, there's benefits to this. One is that they're often very psychic. In other words, an emotional empath would be the one to know the text is coming before it even arrives and know who it's from. They start pulling out their phone before it's even made a sound. Right? Or the emotional empath thinks of someone and then their email comes in, or the phone call comes, or the text comes in. You're very psychically connected to the people in your life. They don't have to be in the same room with you. They could be on the other end of the globe. And if you know them, love them, are connected with them, you'll feel them. You'll feel their thoughts and feelings. Well, that's wonderful. But again, the downside, and everything has a downside, is with such an open consciousness, so much can be coming in, so much information from all the people in your life or around you in the room. You'll be getting psychic impressions, you'll be getting feelings, and you may not realize, wait a minute, this isn't my feeling. There's no reason for me to be feeling like this. How come I'm feeling like this all of a sudden? Well, that's a really good way to start thinking, because then you can start to identify when you've taken on somebody else's feeling. Emotional empaths often describe themselves to me as contact criers. And what I mean by that is, they're the people who, if they're in a room with a group of people and somebody starts crying, they'll cry too, because they feel those feelings so easily. They're so emotionally available. They're so psychically available. And they can't understand why this happens to them and not other people. It's because they're that kind of empath. So let's talk about this. How might you know? I mean, you probably already, if you're an emotional empath, you probably already can relate to this, but if you can't relate to the contact crier thing, here's some other ways that an emotional empath often experiences life. Their hearts are so open, and they're often, not often, but sometimes they feel overwhelmed by their love for the world. This feeling of just expansive love, or they walk down the street just feeling love for all of nature and the babies in the strollers and the dogs running by and everyone. There's just this pure love that radiates out of them. If you find that you do that frequently, you're probably an emotional empath. Emotional empaths are often interested in so many things. They're taking, 4 different workshops at once and reading all these books and working on all these projects. It's like, oh, this is so exciting. That's kind of the feeling that they get. So interesting, so much to learn. And that can contribute to having trouble paying attention to any one thing for very long. That's often an issue with them. Or trouble completing projects, because it's kind of like they're working on one thing and all of a sudden it's like squirrel, and then now they're over to the other thing. And that can be an issue, part of the design of an emotional empath. Emotional empaths often use a lot of exclamation points in their texts or emails. So if you go back and look at what you've written, you'd be like, oh, if you put, 4 exclamation points at the end of each sentence, I guarantee you're an emotional empath. And emotional empaths often believe that the solution to everything is just keeping your heart totally open. No matter how someone treats you, you should always stay in a loving and open-hearted place with them. And that is a lovely concept that is not always appropriate. And so I'm going to talk about that in a minute. So we see why emotional empaths can be judged by other people as being too emotional, but a lot of this, not their emotions, other people's emotions. So how do we cope with this? How do we deal with this if we're emotional empaths? We look to Chinese medicine for a remedy. And one of the remedies that Chinese medicine suggests for this kind of experience is to use what they call discernment. Now, that has many different meanings for this kind of person, but one meaning is learn to discern what is your feeling and what isn't your feeling. Learn to discern what's not yours. And one way to do this is just to be more conscious, pay more attention to what you're feeling. Now, that may seem counterintuitive. It may seem illogical. If you're already feeling too much, why would you want to turn and welcome more, to pay more attention to your feelings? But that's actually the solution. You do it in a different way, though. You don't get lost in the feelings. You don't take them so seriously. You observe them and you think, wait a minute, I wasn't feeling like this before I walked into this room or before I started emailing this person. Maybe this feeling that just washed over me, maybe it doesn't have anything to do with me. Maybe it's not mine. Maybe it belongs to the person in this room or someone in this room or the person I'm emailing. Or maybe there's someone who's thinking of me and sending psychic messages my way, and that's their emotion right now and I'm feeling it. The more that you can practice doing this, the more that you will be able to manage your psychic boundaries, your emotional boundaries, your energetic boundaries as an emotional empath. And that practice alone can really start to transform the experience for you, help you be more grounded, help you discern what's your feeling and what's not your feeling. Is it mine? Not mine. Give it a try. If you relate to being an emotional empath, for the next few days, just give it a try. Even, before you leave the house in the morning, how am I feeling emotionally right now? And then when you get to where you're going, whether it's your job or school or whatever, after several minutes, tune in again. And what's happening with your emotions now? Well, any change could be your emotional reaction to the people there, could be your feelings. But it might also very well be that you're soaking in their feelings and having it kind of be all too much. Okay? So I hope that makes sense. If you have any questions about that, type them in the Q&A field if you're watching live. Okay. Myth number 2 about empaths. This myth says that empaths are oversensitive, they're picky, they're uptight people, they're so hard to deal with. And this refers to another type of empath, refers to the misperception and misunderstanding of them, and that's the physical empath. So we talked first about the emotional empath and how they soak in the emotions around them. The physical empath doesn't do that. The physical empath physically feels the energy around them, the energy of the people, even the energy of the environment that they're in. And they're affected physically. So for instance, a physical empath would walk into a room and suddenly just want to leave. But not be able to explain why. There's just something that feels off, something that doesn't feel right. They don't feel good there. They're immediately aware, oh, I don't want to be here. That is an example of what would happen to a physical empath. Often physical empaths are the ones who avoid crowding shopping malls like the plague. They'll never go there during holiday shopping season because the intensity of all the energy of all the people around them is so much, it puts them into overwhelm. If you have ever gone to the mall, gone shopping, or been at work at a busy day with lots of people, and you come home just exhausted, well, you may just rack it up to, gosh, I didn't have much energy today, or I wonder why I'm so tired, or I must have been working harder than I thought. But it may not have been that at all. It's that your system was having to cope with a lot of energy around you, and that can be exhausting. Physical empaths often need alone time at the end of the day just to recuperate from their experiences. They need to come home and go in a room with four walls and a door that maybe that locks if they live with someone. They need to get away. They need space in order to stay in balance. And that's not what's wrong with them. They are not fragile flowers. They are more open and aware energetically than other people are, other types of people. And so when they walk into a room, they're reading more information in the energy of the room than another type of person might. And being so open in that way is lovely. It's great. Often emotional empaths are really good at reading people. They just, they start talking with someone, and whether they're aware of it or not, they're kind of scanning the energy of the person. They get a good sense of who that person is. And it's a benefit because it helps you then know how to communicate with them, know how the other person is feeling, how close to stand to them. There's benefits from being an emotional empath, but it can be exhausting. One thing that emotional empaths do is that because they can feel how other people are feeling, they're always trying to make other people comfortable. They're often very gracious, charming people. And so if they're having a conversation with someone and they're obviously sensing their energy, which is what they naturally do whether they know it or not, they are also trying to adjust their frequencies to the frequency of the person they're talking to. It's a lovely talent. But imagine if you're going through your day constantly having to adjust your energy to the energy of other people. Well, when do you get to vibrate at your own frequency? Well, probably only when you get home and you get to go in that room. And then finally, you get to be yourself. It's too much to expect yourself to be able to make those adjustments all the time. Physical empaths do that because if the person they're talking to is uncomfortable or stressed, well, they take that on, they soak that in, and then they're more uncomfortable and more stressed. So it's kind of a self-preservational tactic to really, as well as being very nice, to try to adjust to the person you're speaking with. That requires a lot of energy. In Chinese medicine, they talk about physical empaths as literally having thin skin. What that means is that they soak in energy through their skin more easily than other people do, and then it affects them physically. It is the physical empath then who often has more health-related issues in terms of trying to deal with being an empath. We often see allergies of some sort, or food sensitivities, or environmental sensitivities, autoimmune illnesses we often see with physical empaths, illnesses of the digestive system especially, and or of the skin and the lungs like asthma. So if you can relate to being a physical empath and then you recognize you may have some of these health problems, there are ways that we can create a shift in how much of a sponge you are, how much you take on, that can really help at least ease the health issues. In my workshops, in my energy clearing workshops, what I often find is that people who come to these workshops to learn energy clearing report that, gosh, they eat a very limited diet because so many foods disagree with them. So some people, there's only 4 different foods they can eat, and everything else they have a problem with. But as they learn energy clearing, they find that all of a sudden these foods that they used to not be able to eat, they can eat, and eventually there's nothing that disagrees with them. And let me explain why. In Chinese medicine, they believe that the body is very wise and knows how to heal itself as long as its energy is in balance. So if you go to an acupuncturist, their goal is actually not to heal you. Their goal is to find the right points to put the needles in, to bring your system's energy into balance, and then they step back and they let the wisdom of the body take over to heal. Well, we apply these same principles, but on an energetic scale, on a whole life scale, right? That we shift the energy in a very subtle and gentle way to bring your system into balance on all levels. People often call my work acupuncture for the spirit because it's not about sticking needles in your body, but it's about creating tiny little energetic shifts that are the equivalent of needles in your energy field, in your life, so that your life comes into balance and then things unfold almost effortlessly. This is the beauty of this work, and this is why I find it so powerful for anyone who considers themselves a sensitive person. Okay, so how do you know if you're a physical empath? Well, craving alone time at the end of the day is often a very common symptom. And again, I want to make sure you understand that this is not a weakness. And often, physical empaths blame themselves for this, think something's wrong with them that they need alone time. This is medicine for you. You need this because you're more open and more aware than other people. You're taking in and dealing with more information than other people, and you just need a little bit of time to come back into balance. If you need your own space in many ways, so if you need your own office, you can't stand to share an office with someone else, or if people stand too close to you, that can be difficult for you, or even just if you need your own space in terms of getting used to something, getting used to an idea, thinking about it, getting used to a relationship, taking it slowly, not rushing things. That's often what a physical empath needs. Physical empaths tend to care very much about little details, and they will notice details that other people miss. So if you know that about yourself, you're probably a physical empath. And I often see that physical empaths, when they get stressed or overwhelmed, one of the first signs is they will stop breathing, or they will start to breathe too shallowly. There will be issues with the breath. So even just taking a nice deep breath can help you cope as a physical empath. But other ways to cope as a physical empath, in some similar ways to what we talked about with the emotional empaths, you observe yourself more and you start to understand what's really going on. If you walk into a room and you start to just feel like you want to get out of there, or recognize it's not that lunch is disagreeing with you or something's wrong with you emotionally or mentally, is that maybe there's some energy left in that room that you are sensing, that you are feeling, and that's some information for you. It doesn't mean that the energy there is going to be bad for you. And in fact, it's empowering to know, oh, there's something off in this room. There's nothing off with me. There's something off in this room. Now, what I'd love to do is teach you how to clear that energy that's out of balance there so that you don't have a problem with it. You can also learn to clear yourself so you don't have a problem with it. But even as I was talking about with the emotional empaths, notice how you're feeling physically as you go through your day. If you sit down in a chair in the doctor's office waiting for your appointment, and all of a sudden you start to feel tired or dizzy or something else, well, you might immediately think, oh God, I'm sure glad I'm at the doctor's because something's really wrong with me. Well, wait a minute, maybe somebody who sat in that chair before you was ill and they left some of that energy in the chair, and you sit down in that little invisible cloud of energy and you start to pick up their symptoms and think they're yours because you're feeling it, but they're not yours. And again, this ability to start to recognize when a feeling is not yours, whether it's a physical feeling or an emotional feeling, is incredibly empowering. Recognize as you go through your day that you're walking through a sea of energy. It's invisible, you can't see it, but there's a cloud of energy around people, around you, in places that as you walk through the world, you are sensing and affecting this whether you know it or not. For emotional empaths, it affects them emotionally. For physical empaths, it affects them physically. So just observe and notice. You know, in my book, Clear Home, Clear Heart, I give the example about how, if you go to someone's home for a visit one evening and you walk in their front door and you smell curry. Well, okay, you immediately think, oh, they must have cooked a curry dinner. You don't think, oh no, something's gone wrong with my nose. This is terrible, my nose. You don't think that. While you're in their house, you'll be smelling curry. And when you leave their house, you won't be smelling curry anymore. Well, it's the same thing with energy. When you walk into a room with some heavy or stagnant energy or some imbalanced energy, you'll feel it, but oh, this is some information about the room, just like that was some information about what your friends cooked for dinner. When you're with someone where their energy feels a little off or it's kind of tiring to be around them, this is some information about them. But it's not dangerous for you, especially as you start to reframe and understand what's really going on. Up till now, you've taken it on, and it has been risky for you. It has affected you. As we can transform our understanding of this, as you can learn to just let it go, just clear it, which is what I'm going to talk about in a minute, then you can walk through the world in balance, and you don't have to protect yourself from scary stuff because it's all just energy. And if you know how to dance with that energy, then you can go anywhere and be with anyone and still be in balance. Sure, you can get stressed. I get stressed all the time, but I rebalance immediately. I notice when I'm starting to take something on, or even when it's my own stuff. I can go, oh, that's interesting, and then just let it go, and I come right back into balance within moments, instead of getting washed away in my own personal drama and then maybe taking hours or even days to come back into balance. So before I get into myth number 3, which is a very important one, I do want to talk a little bit about the next step with this, about how you can learn to clear your own energy, to deal with any old stuff from your past history that you're still lugging around, or to clear the energy that you may take on from other people, or to help other people by clearing their energy for them. You know, up until now, the only way that you could learn energy clearing was to come to a 5-day retreat that I only teach twice a year in the US. And I always try to think of ways to carve times in my schedule to find other ways, but up until now I haven't been able to. And this year, that's it. I'm declaring, I'm bringing clearing to you. I know that not everybody can come to a full 5-day retreat. It costs time and money. I understand that. So what I am doing this spring, this April and May, is I am teaching 2-day weekend workshops in several cities across the US, and we'll also have one in London as well for anybody watching from Europe or the UK, or if you want an excuse to travel. This is where you learn personal energy clearing, how to clear your own energy, how to clear other people's energy, how to clear your children, how to clear your animals, how to clear the plants in your garden. We teach clearing. It is a beautiful, simple, elegant way to work with energy that anyone can learn. So let me talk about where these are going to be. And I wrote this down because I always forget exact dates and places. So it's going to start the first weekend in April, April 6th and 7th in San Francisco. It'll be Clear Heart is the name of the workshop. And if you look on my events page on my website, the flyer there lists all the details and everything that you get and everything that you learn. So have a look at that. San Francisco, April 6th and 7th. Seattle, April 27th and 28th, in a beautiful arboretum, this gigantic park in Seattle, this most lovely place to learn energy clearing. So I hope you can, everybody in the Pacific Northwest, I hope you can join me there. In Chicago, May 4th and 5th, at the Infinity Foundation in Highland Park. In London, my certified teacher, Zita Leckerberg from Sweden, will be teaching in London May 11th and 12th. And then the final one will be in Boston, May 18th and 19th. So have a look on my website, jeanhainer.com. On the events page, everything is listed there and all the information. And if you have questions, use my contact page on my website. Shoot me questions. We send personal replies to everybody. So we'll be sure to answer your questions. Okay, I want to get into myth number 3 and then a little bit of wrap up and then questions. So I'm looking at our time here. So myth number 3. Here's the thing. I'm seeing more and more information being put out there about empaths, where they say that all empaths are sweet, kind, compassionate, open-hearted people. And it's usually, the information is usually put out there by people who want to sell you something. So that's one thing to watch out for. But it feels a little pandering and manipulative to me, trying to, butter you up. And in fact, the myth, that's a myth. The truth is, well, let me put it this way. I want you to think of someone in your life, either right now or in the past, who you would define as a quote unquote difficult person. You know what I'm talking about? Someone who's so negative all the time, so hard to get along with. Nothing is right. Nothing is good enough. No matter what you do, you bend over backwards to try to make them happy, and they're still unhappy and still so negative. Difficult people. Right? I guarantee you that most likely that person is an empath. And you're thinking, what? Here's the thing, not all empaths are able to manage so well. And when you are so easily put into overwhelm and you have no language for what you're going through and no knowledge about how to deal with it and no education in how to set up energetic boundaries, you do the best you can. Most empaths try to stay very open-hearted and kind and compassionate. Yes, absolutely. But you will also see the other end of the spectrum where the empath has, in great distress, just found the only solution to them is to shut down, to shut their hearts, to get lost in negativity, to be rigid, to be unkind, even mean in an attempt to protect themselves from too much. They feel under assault by people, by energy. They don't understand what's going on. We need to have compassion for these people. They are empaths who are in terrible distress, who've had no help, who have no idea what's going on or how to deal with it. And energy clearing can really help them. I'm sure that if you've had a difficult person in your life, at some point you have tried to reason with them. You've tried to have a conversation with them about, you know, gosh, I tried this and I tried that, and couldn't you be a little bit more open to this or that? And they're like, I can't hear you, because they're so shut down. You can't reason with them. This is energetic. And it can't be addressed head on. It can't be addressed through reasoning and rationale. It has to be addressed energetically to help them feel more safe, to help them release the stuff that they're holding on to help their system relax and come back into balance. So if there are difficult people in your life, energy clearing is the way to help them, because you can clear people at a distance. You don't have to be in the same room with them. And once you've had good experience learning how to clear and doing some practice sessions, you can clear people even without telling them. Now, let me comment on that, because I feel a lot of people going, well, no, wait, you always have to have people's permission to do energy work on them. And for all other forms of energy work, that's actually true, because most forms of energy work are trying to do something to the person to help them. Energy clearing is not doing something to them. It's based on making an energetic connection, a very compassionate energetic connection that just allows stress and tension, emotional, energetic, physical, to just release. It allows imbalances to release. Energy clearing basically just brings balance back on a spirit level. And I always describe it as like peeling the layers of an onion. It's very gentle, it's very subtle, but it's incredibly powerful. And I've heard from so many people over the years who come to workshops only able to eat for things, or just lost in anxiety or tension or self-judgment or feeling stuck in life. And after learning clearing, it's like the floodgates open, the chi is flowing again, life shows up, and gosh, they turn around and look back and think, oh my God, ever since I went to that workshop, this has happened, and this has happened, and this has happened. And of course, we can never claim it had anything to do with clearing, but I see it happen so often. So I'm rarely overly assertive with people. I'm rarely making demands on people, but I want to say to you, I really want you to come to one of these workshops, because I know the power it can have to transform your life. You'll not only learn how to do energy clearing, you receive clearings in the workshop. So you come out having a lot of layers released. And as well afterwards, you stay connected with a community of now we're at the point of thousands of people all over the world who know how to do clearing. And you can request a clearing at any time for yourself or someone in your life. So you're never cut off. Once you have been to a workshop, you're part of the family. You're part of the community here, and we take care of each other. Someone is always awake in the world to give you a clearing. Let's see if there's anything else I want to say about that. Let me look at this. I think that's pretty much it, except I want to give you the end of my story and then I want to take questions. So I talked about how when I was a child, I was so sensitive to energy and sick all the time. That lasted until I was in my 20s and I got married. I married into a Chinese family, a very traditional Chinese family from China. My mother-in-law started to teach me things about Chinese culture, Chinese philosophy, Chinese medicine, and I was a very eager student. She taught me about feng shui, and that was a revelation to me because I suddenly realized maybe I'm not crazy. Maybe there is invisible energy in the world, which is what feng shui deals with in spaces, and maybe I can feel it, and maybe I can work with it. So that was my entry into energy work. I started doing feng shui consultations long ago, 30 years ago, long before it was a big fad in this country, and eventually was teaching feng shui. And here's the thing, I still didn't know what I was doing. I knew feng shui, but I didn't know how to manage my energetic boundaries. So I would go do a feng shui consultation in someone's home and come back from that just obliterated, just exhausted, just it would take me all evening or sometimes the whole next day to recover because I had been soaking in energy from their space. I didn't know how to develop boundaries. I learned my lesson the hard way. I had two clients. One was a midwife and one was an expectant mother. And when they found out she was pregnant, they called me up and said, hey, when she goes into labor, can we call you and will you just energetically support the labor? Well, I, of course, was very thrilled and honored. I said, of course, but I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know what I'd do. I guess I just thought I'd send love and light or something. Well, I didn't think much more about it. Months went by, and all of a sudden I was at home one evening and doubled over in excruciating pain. It lasted for 3 hours. I felt like my uterus was exploding. I had no idea what was going on. I was literally pulling on my coat to drive myself to the hospital when the pain just vanished. And so I'm relieved. I went to bed. I got up the next morning and my phone rang, and it was the midwife. She said that the woman had gone into labor very suddenly and things had taken a very sudden downturn very quickly. They didn't get a chance to call me. This was before cell phones. She said, we were just in the hospital room calling out your name. Well, the agreement had been made months before. And on an energetic level, my system got that message, and it did the only thing it knew how to do. It took some of her pain. I was experiencing her pain, trying to help. That's not how you help people. The reason my pain stopped after 3 hours was it was at that point, and I checked the time with the midwife, it was at that point they gave her an epidural and the pain stopped. She'd been resisting any kind of medication pain relief because she wanted to have a natural birth. She finally gave in at that point, and when her pain stopped, my pain stopped. So that convinced me I either needed to stop doing this completely or I needed to get educated and figure out how to have energetic boundaries and how to do this right. And that launched me on many years of a journey of studying energy work in cultures all around the world, which eventually helped me develop this very simple, refined, elegant system that even if you're doing another kind of energy work, you can seamlessly integrate this with that. It's so easy. That I find really, and of course I'm biased, but I find the most refined, gentle, subtle, but really powerful form of energy work. And since that day, I have never suffered from taking on anybody's energy. I understand how to cope with it. I can sense when I'm starting to take something on, and I just let it go. So again, this is Jean wagging her finger, pleading, come to a workshop. I promise you, this is an amazing experience. It'll benefit for you for the rest of your life. Okay, enough of all that. I want to turn to Susan now. Susan, if you wouldn't mind letting me know, are there questions?
Oh, yes. We have lots of questions. We have a great active group. There are lots of conversations in the chat box. This is just wonderful. We have a lot of questions, several questions. We do have some people who have kind of asked similar things from to each other. A lot of questions on, again, emotional empaths. I'm sorry that I've been so focused on all the activity. Did you actually address the third type of empath?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Excuse me, and hold on, I'm going to cough. So if you would mute me for a second.
Yes. Muted. She's muted, so we don't have to hear that. Poor baby. This is her clearing. This is what happens. She's actually clearing some of the
Sorry about that. Yeah, I tuned into somebody's energy, and sometimes when I do that and they have something pretty intense to clear, I just go into automatic clearing and it makes me cough. I don't usually cough when I'm clearing, so I don't want you to think if you come to a workshop you'll end up coughing all over the place. But at this point, when I encounter stressed energy, if it's really intense, sometimes I cough as it just clears. So somebody got a little mini clearing. Sorry about that.
There's a lot of energy. Even I'm feeling it.
Yeah.
I'm not nearly as sensitive as you. Anyway, so people, one person said, did you follow me to describe emotional empath? Question,
yeah, I've got cameras in your house.
A good one. I think we could all say that. You know, were you following me? Were you watching me? Okay, so here's a good question. Why are we born empaths? I feel so much all the time. And some days I don't wish to be around humans, only nature and animals. I can understand this. I often take the bus and I'm learning to zap the energy before it enters me. Also, I do not feel so much of it in other countries like Spain. They're often dancing and singing in the streets. The fear energy in the collective here in the United States is often so challenging for me. The people in Spain seem happier to me. Maybe this is it. Do you have comments on that?
Well, those were a few questions. Let me give you a few answers. Certainly, and I was thinking about this earlier today, certainly since 2016, most empaths in the US, if not the world, have been affected by this overriding fear and anxiety that's gripped our country. And so you're not alone in that. And I think we all struggle with trying to manage that because everything is interconnected, right? In Chinese medicine, they discovered thousands of years before Western medicine that everything is interconnected and affecting each other all the time. So someone else's anxiety can affect you, especially if you're an empath. And then if we have a whole country of Americans feeling anxious, or at least a huge percentage of them feeling anxious, well, that will affect us as empaths more than other people. So we need to be aware of that. And this is another reason I really encourage people to learn clearing, because you can clear yourself and then you can cope better. You can come back into balance. Now, it is very common that when you visit another country, you think, this is great. This is fabulous. I should move here. But in fact, all it is just different. It's a different frequency. It's a different vibration. It's new to you. It doesn't trigger you the way the old energy did. If you're an American and grew up in the US, there's big layers of energy from your childhood and everything still around you that needs to be cleared. And the energy of the US and what you're used to, that's pushing your buttons. You go to a brand new country, which I highly recommend because it can be a revelation to experience the energy of a different country. So you'll find that and then you'll think it's heaven. But if you move to Spain, what will happen is eventually you'll start to soak in that energy and you'll have to be dealing with that in a different way, and it will trigger you in different ways. And you know that old saying, wherever you go, there you are? Well, it's about dealing with our stuff. So it's not that we have to find the one perfect place on earth where we can cope. It's about learning to be in balance no matter what happens so that wherever we are, we're fine. And then we can go to Spain and have a wonderful time, but then we can come home and have a wonderful time too. So the purpose is not to get tighter and tighter or try to find the one right thing. It is to allow everything to be the right thing. And that is achievable. Why we become empaths, I believe that we all sign a soul's contract before we're born about what kind of life we're signing up for this time, what challenges we'll take on, what lessons we need to learn in our personal evolution. And so it's right for us to be empaths. And there are amazing gifts in being an empath. But first, you need to learn how to manage boundaries and not be an overwhelm. And our culture doesn't yet have a language and education for that. There are people, including me, that are kind of now bringing this forward so that we can have some language and some permission to understand this more. So don't think, oh God, why did you do this to me? It's fantastic that you are so open energetically and you can help the world through this. But first you need to learn how to manage your energy. Okay? Hope that helps.
Thank you. Several people have asked about being multiple types of empaths. Can you be one or two or all three kinds of empaths at the same time and be the same person?
Yeah, I mean, there's many different kinds of empaths. The two main ones are the ones that I've just touched on. Those are the most common, and many people are both. You can absolutely, I'm both. You can absolutely be an emotional empath and a physical empath. There's other types that aren't as challenged. They're a little bit more minor. But if you're both a physical and emotional empath, welcome to my world. And it's beautiful on the other side. So don't despair. And again, this is fabulous that you are so open and aware, and you need to learn how to use these talents to help others, to ease suffering, to spread compassion in the world. That's what my work is all about. This is a very heart-based system. It's not about judging. It's not about trying to fix or change someone. It's really actually about heart-to-heart energy, just vibrating with each other.
Exactly. Okay, to combine a lot of questions, I do want to remind everybody that if you're on Jean's mailing list, that you will get a replay. There's been a lot of information covered here and a lot of questions because there's just so much going on. So make sure you're on her mailing list. If you're not, contact@jeanhainer.com will get you on the mailing list. You'll get a replay. And a lot of the questions that are being asked that were covered will be answered. It's just been a lot to follow. So I want to let you all know that if we don't get to all of your questions, a lot of them will be.
And let me interrupt for 1 second. The best way is actually to go to the contact page on my website.
Okay.
So go to the contact page on my website and shoot a message. And yes, everybody on my list, if you're on my mailing list, you'll get a link to the replay, and you also get a link to the flyer so you can take a look at that so you don't have to do any extra work.
Exactly. And a lot of people are asking, well, what can we do about this? Well, what you can do about this is get to the workshops.
Well,
that's
also,
what's really
but let me intervene 1 second, and thank you for that, Susan. I appreciate that, because Susan's been to tons of workshops, so she knows how great this is. I don't want people to think that this is me just saying, well, sorry, you just have to come to a workshop. Remember, I've told you now, I've given you some tips about how you can start to cope right away. For an emotional empath, remember I walked you through the steps about checking on your emotions. And if you enter a new space or are with a new person and you start to feel a little overwhelmed or a different feeling, recognize that's not yours. Just that awareness alone can start to change that experience for you. That alone can really help you. As well with a physical empath, you have a very high level of awareness. Start to use that more for your own benefit. Start to be aware of little changes in your physical feelings, but don't have your usual reaction, which is to go, oh no, I'm getting sick. Recognize if you smell curry in your friend's house, that is not detrimental to you. It's just some information about the space. If you feel a little bit, woo, something's off, well, maybe it's the person or the room that you're in. That is empowering. That will help you learn to cope differently, to not take it on, but let it just kind of keep going. It's just information about the energy around you.
Exactly. So several of us, not just me, missed the third kind of empath. Can you just repeat the 3 types?
So the first myth is that empaths are over-emotional, volatile emotionally, fragile emotionally, always get their feelings too hurt. The second myth is that empaths are picky and persnickety and uptight. And the third myth about empaths is that they're all lovely and kind and warm-hearted, that the difficult person in your life is most likely an empath who is highly distressed and needs some help and needs some compassionate understanding.
Thank you. Thank you. There are several people who are talking about how do I cope with being both an emotional and a physical empath. This seems to be specifically one person says, do you believe that empaths will suffer from headaches and back issues, neck pain? So these are very specific physical.
Well, it's interesting because with my work with Chinese medicine, I am not an acupuncturist. I have no credentials in Chinese medicine, so let me make that clear. I have studied Chinese medicine for 30 years, but on a spirit level, how to help people emotionally. And there are parts of the body and certain physical illnesses that have to do with different emotions, different imbalances in the spirit. So you're right that these symptoms, we can read deeper meanings into them and intuit, or not intuit, know what's really going on, where the energy's off, and how we can help that person. The beauty about clearing, however, is that it's not an up in the head analytical process, because that's not how change happens and that's not how energy moves. So you don't have to know what's wrong in order to clear it. I promise you, it's really quite amazing. So it can help you, and I'm a very left-brained person, so I understand the need to kind of figure out and analyze, and that's very helpful. But we need both head and heart. We need to be connected in mind and body, and that's what clearing can do for us.
Thank you. Someone wants to know, how can my daughter and I shield ourselves from the energy when we step outside?
Yeah. Well, so here's the thing. If you feel like you have to protect yourself, shield yourself, what that tells your system on all levels is that there's something dangerous out there. There's something bad and scary out there. And in fact, it's all just energy. I know that right now, for people who don't know how to deal with that, that's their only solution. But what that does is it tightens up your energetic system. It can harden your heart. It can shut your heart. It can make you anxious. It doesn't help. It can actually exacerbate the situation. You shouldn't have to shrink wrap yourself in order to go through the world. If you just recognize it's just information, if you step out your door and you start to feel, whoa, this is weird, okay, there's some information about the energy there. It doesn't mean it's going to hurt you. If you believe it's going to hurt you, then you'll have a fear reaction, and then you can make yourself overly emotional or sick, but it's not the energy that's doing that to you. It's how you react to it, how you respond to it. So I would suggest, don't worry so much about shielding yourself. Understand, oh, this is information. This is cool. Wow. It's almost like, a little taste test. Oh, this is salty. This is sweet. This is some heavy energy. That's some nice energy. It's just, the world is a beautiful, sensual place. It's just energy if you learn to understand it at a different pace, so to speak.
Exactly. So someone has this question. I think I might be an empath, but I don't fit the descriptions very well. My sense of other people's emotions is more submerged or external to me, if you will. Yes. To the point where I wonder if I'm just really vigilant about others and what I need to know about them, as opposed to actually absorbing their emotions.
Yeah.
What do you think about this? Have you seen others like this?
Well, I need to have a little bit more of a conversation with you, but just from the little you've said, it sounds like you're more of an intuitive empath, and that's someone who isn't so connected with the outside world. It's all happening under the surface inside, and that you can get intuitive impressions about people that can give you good information. But you're right, it's not so much about soaking in energy and getting off balance. It's that your intuitive impressions may build into some story that's not based on truth. So you'll get an impression that's based on truth, but then your system, because you have a very good imagination, will start to elaborate and make an additional story out of that. And then you're not sure, what's your imagination and what's true intuition and what's really true and what's not true. And that's what an intuitive empath needs to learn, how to discern those different things.
Thank you so much. I believe that must be me. I'm along with the other person who was asking that. That's me. Thank you. I'm sure we're not alone. Um, a couple people have asked about the idea of, is it necessary, or when is it necessary to have permission from someone else before you clear them?
Yeah. So listen, this is early days with this. What I teach in workshops is when you're first learning, you never clear anybody without getting their permission first, because you haven't yet learned how to do it. I usually advise at least several months of regular practice once you learn clearing, before you're in a place where you're not trying to do anything to them. Because we're all trained in our Western culture to try to do something. We have to kind of unlearn that with clearing. It's much more of a relaxed and open-hearted kind of thing, not trying to do or fix or force a change. So it's a little bit of a learning curve. And you will know when you're ready. You may not think you will know, but you will know. But I am extremely conscientious and careful about advising people to do that kind of thing. So I would always err on the side of caution and ask them for permission until you got your wings and you're flying, and then you don't have to anymore. It's a process, just like anything. But the beautiful thing about clearing is, I always joke that I studied 30 years so that I can teach you this in 2 days. That you learn it in the workshop, and then it can be in a moment in a day. If you're feeling a little stressed, you just clear yourself and it's fine. It's not that you have to go through some big ceremony or do some things or do the two-step or whatever. You can just literally in moments come back into balance, or do that for someone else. It's not a huge effort.
Okay, sorry. I'm getting confused of whether I'm muted or unmuted. Someone asked, if you can clear someone from a distance, are you interfering with their free will?
Oh, well, again, you make a good point. That's a very good question, because if you're doing something to them, you absolutely are. In order to fix somebody, you have to figure out what's wrong. And then you have to figure out what to do about what's wrong. And then you have to kind of target them and take out your hammer and your wrench. And that's not what clearing is about at all. We're not interfering with their energy. We're not doing anything to them. And I know that, we don't have time tonight for me to kind of, not talk in kind of weird ways about what? What do you mean you're not doing anything to them? You're not doing anything at all. But this is how energy works. It is a fallacy to think that we can direct energy at someone to change things for them or fix them. That's not how energy works. And a lot of energy work systems don't have that understanding, that depth of understanding. Just think of it like acupuncture, that we're just bringing balance back. We're not trying to get a specific change. With clearing, we're not attached to a specific outcome. We're not holding on to making something happen, or we don't even know the best thing that needs to happen. We're just bringing balance back. We're not doing anything to the person. And there's a big distinction.
Thank you. We have a few people who are asking questions about how you are often saying it's just information, and sometimes you will remind us that you're not your emotions, thoughts, sensations, personality. So people are kind of wondering about how do we work with this? Is it context instead of content of information?
So let me interrupt here, because okay. We've got a lot of wonderful empaths on the line, and one thing that empaths are really good at is analysis, and they start to pick things. Well, what about this and what about that? And it's just that's not the level of conversation we can have. And I would, I know you understand that, we're already over an hour here, that I can't in a minute just kind of go, oh, well, it's this, because it's not linear. This is the understanding that you do get in a workshop. It's not something that I can convey to you in a 1-hour webinar. Of course, anything of any depth and substance can't be conveyed like that. We will tend, because we're so conditioned in our culture, we'll tend to approach this in a linear and analytical way. And especially if we're empaths, we'll tend to do that. And I would just say there's another door we approach this with, and that's where the answer is. So in a way, one of the things that empaths have to learn to do, especially those of us, myself included, who are left brain and analytical, is to trust. to trust that you will be led, that you will get the information that you need, that you know you will be able to do this. A lot of empaths are perfectionists. They're very self-critical. They're very anxious about making mistakes or doing it wrong or not being able to learn it. And I can reassure you that in all the years I've been teaching this, there's not a single person who's not been able to learn how to do clearing. It just takes the in-person experience. As I often say, there are some things that can't be learned online, and clearing is one of them. We can talk about it online, but we can't learn it online. There was something else I wanted to say, and now I've forgotten it. Oh, this thing that you were saying, Susan, about how people are saying, I'm telling them that they're not their personality. I don't say that. Of course you're your personality. We all have a personality, but the feelings that you have are often not yours. That's the point, that you may be taking on feelings of other people, but believing them to be yours because you're feeling them inside of you. So of course, why wouldn't you think that they're yours? This is a kind of a new way of looking at this. It is information, what you feel, how you react. But again, it's just information. And so we don't need to freak out about it. We don't need to react to it the way that we've probably been reacting to it for decades now. So little by little, we'll get there. So I hope that helps a little bit to clarify.
Right. Well, there's obviously a lot to this. There are a lot more questions. There are also questions about space clearing that I did tell people those are kind of advanced questions for this group. And
well,
so
let me just interrupt one more time as well, because space clearing is not what you learn in these weekends. So I want to make sure that we're not confusing people or making them think that they'll also learn space clearing. If you want to learn how to clear people and spaces, then come to a 5-day retreat, because that's where you get the total package there. If you want to learn you know, how to clear yourself and other people, then come to a 2-day workshop, and that gets you started.
Exactly. Exactly. So we have lots more questions and over time here.
But that's fine. I think that we've gotten the gist of things, and I hope at least you guys have gotten a taste of this. And I'm going to be doing another webinar next month, so you'll get information about that. We'll answer more questions at that time. And I just love you all to pieces. I want to thank you so much for joining me here. Contact me through my contact page if you have any questions. You get a personal answer. Check out the flyer on my events page. And in the meantime, just love and clearing to you across the miles. Thank you, you guys. And thank you, Susan.
Thank you, Jean. And thanks you, everybody, for all your wonderful participation.
Yeah. Bye-bye.